Hi, everyone. Today we're going to take a deeper dive, which, if you watch the first clip, you know that has a double meaning, into the causation tool for grade 11 for unit 2, day 1. In our first clip, if you go back and watch it, it involved Alphonse the camel, the straw that broke the camel's back, and a whole lot on triggers, short-term causes, and long-term causes. Okay? Now, today, what you're going to look at in this clip, although you may have just watched it 2 minutes ago, but you're going to go to it for some independent work, which I'm going to model for you first on looking for triggers, short-term causes, and long-term causes. And remember, that's because we're going to work with the causation tool. The trigger is the tip of the iceberg, just above the surface is the short-term causes, just below the surface is the long-term causes, and then we're going to take a deeper dive today. Now, how are we going to do that? Now, how are we going to take that deeper dive? We're going to go back to the causation tool. Remember, I told you tip of the iceberg, which is the trigger. Just above the surface is short-term cause, below the surface is long-term, and we're going in for the deeper dive. For what? For from new nation to civil war. Now, this is a hyperlink, okay? Your teacher is going to have to share it with you so you can get edit access and highlight in the source. Okay, for now, I took a screenshot, okay, so we can take it apart. Now, your teacher is going to give you a copy of the source. If you notice it's hyperlinked over here, they may give it to you that way. You're looking for the triggers, short-term causes, long-term causes. I'm going to model how you want to look at it. Now, remember, you can highlight as you read. You're going to look for the trigger. Remember, you can highlight it in blue, short-term in yellow, long-term in pink. Okay, so now, From New Nation to Civil War by Uhuru Williams. Uhuru Williams is professor of history and the dean of College of Arts and Sciences, University of St. Thomas. His research focuses on social movements in U.S. history. He's recognized for scholarship on civil rights and Black power. So now, in the 6 decades between 1800 and 1860, the United States faced many obstacles. Remember, guys, if the language gets too hard for you, dictionary.com or Rewordify. Obstacles, foreign and domestic, inside and outside the United States. These hurdles exacerbated, it says made worse, old challenges and tensions created new opportunities. One of the most compelling, or things that push things forward, revolved around the issue of slavery. Okay, now let's go back and remind ourselves, triggers. Well, we're looking for the cause of the Civil War, right? What are the key facts? It says, well, we know we're heading for the causes of the Civil War. Date, it says 1800 to 1860. What else did I pick up already for my triggers? Place, it says United States. Involved people or groups and societies, and what changed. Let's go back and look. Back here, the framers of the nation's founding documents articulated, meaning they spoke about principles affirming freedom and human dignity, but they tiptoed around the issue of slavery, fearing sectional differences over human bondage. Reminder, a section that you care about your part of the country more than the rest of the United States. They feared it might shatter the fragile coalition holding the nation together. One of the nation's chief cities and commercial centers, New York, figured prominently into many of these controversies. Many think of slavery as primarily a Southern problem, but the future of the peculiar institution, that's what they used to call slavery when they didn't want to say slavery, as people at the time, sometimes called slavery, as it says, loomed large in the Empire State, meaning New York. So let's go back and look at what we're highlighting. United States, where specifically it says New York. I'm going to highlight that. New York figured prominently into many of these controversies. I'm going to tell you, though, that it's yellow based on later on in the source. We're going to go to 1858, which is right before. You also want to highlight that the framers tiptoed around the issue of slavery. That is a long-term cause of the Civil War, so we're going to make it pink. Now, let's see how that can work for us here. Involve people or groups. Well, Southerners, people in New York involved in the slave trade. You're going to have to keep reading. It involves a whole story as you read what changed. I can give you a hint and tell you that's going to involve something about a slave ship that officially happened in the South, but it wandered onto Long Island. You're going to read about it right over here as you go further. Okay, next you're going to look at primary cause. It's this, you're going to read about this whole fight about slavery. Immediate forces caused the moment. It has to do with the slave trade. How does the timing and the vector connect to other historical changes? I would put in over here from what you wrote, highlighted. People were fighting about slavery since the Constitution was written. So you're going to read further, and it's saying to look economic, social, political. I'm telling you that you're going to focus on specifically economic because it involves the slave trade. Okay, obviously it's political too. Now you're going to work your way through the source, and you're going to keep labeling short term, long term, and triggers for the actual event. Now remember, you're going all the way to what caused the Civil War. And this is going to be a whole lot of long term over here. Okay, then it goes all the way down till Abraham Lincoln right before the Civil War. And it talks about what led to the Civil War. You're going to have your trigger all the way at the end, which is going to talk about slavery. What you're going to do after you read through that, and it says here on this slide, your teacher may ask you to do this with a partner. You're going to go back and legal, economic, social, political, cultural. Economic is trade and money, and I've been referring to it without explaining it. So here's my time to explain it. Social is how society is organized. Political involves government, people, and power. Culture is ideas, customs, and social behavior. So the first time you go through, you're going to look for trigger, short-term, long-term. The next time you're going to go through, you're going to highlight economic, social, political, cultural. Or you may want to specifically just focus on economic and political. That's how I would do it, because you're going to talk about what was similar and different. Well, there was someone in power and there was someone who wasn't. This is how you take your real deep dive. Do they have particular militaristic, intellectual, religious ideas? No, but they had very strong beliefs about slavery, and there were religious beliefs about slavery. Was it urban or rural? I wouldn't go there. I would talk more about specifically with how the economy depended on it. That the category I would make. How did this moment happen? That a lot of parts of the economy that you would never think depended on slavery, and that's why people were not as supportive as they could or should have been to end slavery earlier, right? Going all the way down toward the end, and I'll point out at the very end, it keeps using, it exacerbates things. Things keep getting made worse because of the issue of slavery until there eventually was a civil war. So when you do the causation tool and you do the deep dive, it tells you to generate your own categories. I think you'll probably want to generate your own categories involving the economics of slavery, okay? Because if you think about it, when you went just below the surface, it was definitely economic and political. Well, there's some social involved. There should be more. The immediate cause is they're going to have a civil war. It's not officially when it starts about slavery, but it's obviously about slavery. And again, this document, it says from new nation to civil war. So the key fact is new nation to civil war. That's the title of the moment. It's the causes of the Civil War. I can tell you that students tend to get all mixed up about the cause of the Civil War. They think everything is the immediate cause. And if that's the case, go back and think about what was the trigger, which is going to be the bombing of Fort Sumter after Lincoln's election. That's the short-term cause. Okay, and the Dred Scott decision and John Brown. And then you're going to go to long-term causes, which involved the entrenchment, how slavery got stuck as an economic system. So the causation tool will help you, especially in Unit 2, because you're going to have to think about all these causes of the Civil War. It's a lot, but if you go back and you think about it first, trigger, short-term, long-term, and then you start to think about all the other layers, like economic, social, political, cultural, depending on what it is, which source. This is obviously a long source. Your teacher's probably going to give you either a piece of it or some time to work on it. You'll do it. You'll get it because you know how to take apart the 4 steps for the causation tool. Good for you. And you probably may want to watch this again.